Kerjasama ekonomi Indonesia Australia terus mengalami peningkatan dalam beberapa tahun terakhir. Terutama, setelah Pemerintah Indonesia dan Australia menandatangani Kerjasama
Australia-Indonesia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, atau IA CEPA.
Nilai perdagangan kedua negara naik 3 kali lipat, dan investasi juga terus tumbuh. Bahkan, kerjasama ini bakal terus meningkat seiring kunjungan Perdana Menteri Australia
Anthony Albanese
ke Indonesia pada Jumat, 6 Februari 2026. Paul Grimes melihat hubungan Australia-Indonesia terus menguat dan momentumnya sangat positif. Kunjungan delegasi bisnis Australia ini penting untuk memperdalam diskusi yang sudah berjalan dan memastikan peluang kerjasama benar-benar berubah menjadi aksi nyata, khususnya antara investor Australia dan mitra Indonesia. Berikut, wawancara eksklusif
Chief Executive Officer Austrade, Paul Grimes
di sela kunjungan ke Jakarta, Rabu 4 Februari 2025.
With the growth projected into the future, largest economy in Southeast Asia and positioned over time to become one of the largest economies in the world, with that ongoing growth of 5% plus. This is why it's very important to have a focus on the longer term opportunities in Indonesia. One of the key points of focus is the economic transformation that is happening in Indonesia. The government's plans, the plans that Danantara is leading around reform that are going to, the green energy reforms, waste to energy, the strengthening of the economy in a number of different sectors. There's a real opportunity to look at complementarities, areas where Australia has capacities, something to offer, and that we can work together, collaborate together in building Indonesia's economy. And one of the areas that I would call out is training. Training of workforce. We quite often hear the importance of training in the workforce, building capability here in Indonesia. And of course, we've had some of our universities now establish campuses here in Indonesia, which has been a very important development over the last 2 years, with Western Sydney University establishing its campus in Surabaya. And on Saturday, I was able to travel to Bandung, where Deakin University, in partnership with Lancaster University, has established a new campus. These are quite exciting developments because it's showing how we can deepen the engagement that we have around training and development here in Indonesia. So this is a particularly important time for our CEPA because it's been in place now for 5 years, I think, Stephen, and with the review that is currently underway into the CEPA, this is going to be a great opportunity for us to look at collectively how do we continue to drive the CEPA forward. How can we improve and strengthen the operation of the CEPA? In Australia, we're at the point where we're calling from submissions from our business community. So our business community will be providing those submissions. They'll be open until the 31st of March. Once we have all of those submissions in, that will help us identify areas for us to be talking with our government counterparts in Indonesia about how collectively we take the CEPA forward as part of the review. So it's probably a little bit too early to be talking about very specific things because we're in the stage of collecting that information from our businesses about areas where we can strengthen and refine the CEPA. But the fact that we've had a CEPA now for 5 years, it has provided the foundation for very strong trade growth to date. Our trade has increased by 3 times over the period that the CEPA has been in place. That's really quite dramatic growth. In the current international environment, middle powers, such as Indonesia, such as Australia, we need to be collaborating more and building those trade and investment opportunities. And with that tripling of trade, we can point to tangible progress, not just what the promise of the future is, but what we are already doing now, and then how do we drive that further into the future. So the CEPA review is a great opportunity. So in some cases, Indonesia is entering into new CEPAs. In this case, it's a CEPA that's been in place for 5 years, and it really reflects that ongoing theme of we're continuing to take the relationship to new highs, and we only do that by active and continuous engagement. You know that Jennifer Westacott is Australia's business champion for Indonesia. In just, I think it would be less than 2 years, she's had 7 visits to Indonesia, 5 missions. So she's coming back, every few months. And it is important that we have this sustained, ongoing engagement that is coupled with the work of our teams here on the ground. And I think Stephen, in his role, leads the deal teams here in Jakarta to drive those investment outcomes here. We think that there's great potential there. We think there's great potential for ongoing engagement. That's one of our key priorities, is to have our investors connected with Danantara to understand Danantara's plans and opportunities. So that has been one of the focuses of the mission, and that will evolve over time as Danantara rolls out its program of work. We want to make sure that we're staying closely connected, we understand the opportunities, and importantly, communicating those back to our investors and the business community in Australia, so that we're always looking for those productive opportunities for collaboration and investment. We'll have to wait and see how those plans develop, but certainly our investors are very interested in hearing about the opportunities from Danantara and looking for scope to be able to make investments. I don't know whether I can say too much more at this stage, given the stage of development. We've had businesses that have been here for a long time. So our focus is always on the longer term opportunities, and to bring that long-term perspective. There's always going to be shorter term issues that might arise from time to time to be worked through. That would be true in Australia and true in Indonesia. But our focus is on driving those longer term opportunities, because our businesses have shown that if you understand the Indonesian context, you're prepared to invest, and that's not only invest money, but invest your time to build the connections, to build the deep engagement and understanding. Then there'll be opportunities to also overcome impediments, whether it be identifying those impediments and having discussions about how they might be removed over time, or working in ways that understand some of the objectives and desires of Indonesia. In the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, our focus is on, how do we engage, as I was saying, over time, over the longer term. The Indonesian government, under the President's leadership, is going to determine what the priorities are for Indonesia. And we see great opportunity that will be a matter for the government to determine, but great opportunity for us to contribute. And it's why I was emphasising the fact that we need to be thinking about our relationship in multiple levels. So capacity building, training. We're hearing directly from our Indonesian counterparts that if we're going to be building food, greater food self-sufficiency, there needs to be capacity building. There needs to be training. There needs to be investment here in Indonesia. So you can see these are all opening up opportunities. So we see, with each of those plans, what we'd be looking for is the ways in which we can assist and engage and help build capacity here in Indonesia. Going back to that basic point of what have we actually seen happen over the last 5 years. We've seen the tripling of trade. So it's always worth coming back to the bigger picture, keeping an eye on the bigger picture. That doesn't mean that there won't be issues.
Okay.
Like what you draw out, are there some issues? Well, we've got the CEPA review. We've got an opportunity to have dialogue about, are there any impediments? Are there any things that are constraining our trade? And then the opportunities to resolve those impediments. We bring both that focus on the longer term, looking for the opportunities, while at the same time creating those opportunities for dialogue, including through the CEPA review about how we most effectively continue to facilitate our trade while recognising the objectives of the President and the government. So this is one of our key functions in the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, is to facilitate inwards investment, just as we're facilitating outwards investment here into Indonesia. Today, the Australian government was prepared by the Australian Trade and Investment Commission in conjunction with other government departments, a prospectus on critical minerals opportunities in Australia, so that investors that was just released today, so we'd be able to provide you with the links to the announcement and the publication of that prospectus, providing real and tangible information about where the investment opportunities are. Some cases, but ultimately these are going to be driven by commercial decisions. But the Australian government also has a future Made in Australia agenda. So the Australian government's got its own agenda around building capability, adding value. Ultimately, the ultimate opportunities are going to be driven commercially by the individual decisions of companies. But the Australian government is very supportive of opportunities to be adding greater value. Of course, when you get into a topic like critical minerals, you're talking about many minerals, different markets, different economics, and indeed different technical processes behind the processing of some of those critical minerals.
Keputusan bisnis terbaik datang dari data, bukan tebakan. Mudah berlangganan Business Insight dengan subscribe with Google. Download aplikasi Kontan sekarang di App Store atau Play Store.